there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today I have a really simple project to do, but the final look is absolutely stunning. Now I will admit that the lights that I use for filming do make this a little bit trickier to see in the video, but I hope that you can give it a go yourself and see the stunning results that you can get with some very limited supplies. Now all I'm going to be using today is a couple of things. First up to work on, I'm going to be using a piece of kids fun foam. This happens to be 3mm, but it doesn't have to be. You can use any kind of packaging foam, kids fun foam, anything like this, anything soft that you can kind of mold into is going to work well. I'm just using regular paper, and then I'm also using some molding tools. Now these are like ball molding tools. Some of them have double-ended, some of them have an end at each end with a different size ball. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. You can pick these up in all sorts of places and they're not too expensive. These are the ones that I happen to have on hand, and I'm just going to choose one of these to work with. But honestly, it is fun to kind of experiment with them, and you'll definitely get different looks depending on the different size balls that you work with. Now, I am going to be putting some straight lines into my piece of paper today. I'm going to create my own kind of embossing. This is, as I said, very simple. You could do this freehand and not use a ruler, but I quite like the look of the lines all being ruled next to each other. So I know at the moment you kind of can't see what I'm doing, but I promise when I move it in the light a little bit and I turn it over, you'll see this gorgeous pattern emerge. And of course you can do absolutely anything with this style. So I'm just pressing kind of medium pressure onto my piece of paper, and honestly you should have a practice piece where you can do all sorts of different pressure and find out what works best for the type of paper and the weight of paper that you are working with. But you can see when I turn this over that there is these gorgeous embossing lines. Now, when I try and kind of turn my lights away a little bit, I'm trying to get you to be able to see it a little bit clearer, but it is really clear. Now, I apologize that my filming lights are not great. Usually I'm filming at all times of day and night, anytime that I can grab to do some filming. I have 2 children at home with me. It is school holidays at the moment, so usually I'm filming at all hours of the night after they've gone to bed, if not a little bit with them during the daytime. But so I'll just do my best, and that's why I need to have filming lights, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see anything. But nonetheless, I am doing some lines in both directions, so they're kind of going vertical and horizontal at this point. Then I just use the end of the ball to kind of do some dots. Now you can make big dots, smaller dots, just depending on how big you kind of make the circle. And again, this is just all texture and all kind of background. I absolutely love this subtle background. With my card making, I love as much as anybody to kind of get into it and do a really complex, long, awesome card making mission. But sometimes I really enjoy the simplistic, clean and simple kind of look to cards as well. So that is definitely what I'm going with today. And these cards do not take long to make at all. I have some Lunar paste. This is from Hurley. This is the best thing that I have found for gold flecks. He does have these in a range of colours, but this one is called Slippery When Wet, and my absolute favourite for gold technique. So I'm just watering down a tiny little bit, checking the splashes on my background piece of paper to see that they're kind of going to end up how I like. And then I just do some really fine specks. The smaller the paintbrush you get in general, the smaller the flecks that you're going to get with your splatters. And then I'm just going to clean up my mess. But I did think, just to keep everything nicely coordinated, I'm going to put a little bit of the same Lunar paste. I mean, this is kind of like a stenciling paste. It's like a really nice whipped kind of butter, I guess, kind of feel to it. And I'm going to pop some down. I'm using my finger, but you could definitely just use a brush or something different if you wanted to. And I'm just using a scrap piece of paper and putting down a kind of thin layer. You could also use some gold cardstock. You could use some normal cardstock and do gold heat embossing on it if you wanted to do this a different way. However, I really like it when things coordinate. So in particular with golds and things, you can have lots of different shades of gold. And I really wanted the splashes in the background to match the words that I was going to put on the front. So these are the thank you word dies from scrapbook.com. And I'm going to use exactly that, the thank and the you, and pop these down on this little piece of coloured cardstock. Now this dries really, really fast. I had done a really thin layer with my finger, and so it dries really fast. That's part of the reason why I used it. I don't have to muck around with the embossing powders and things. So this is a really good option, and the shine on this is absolutely gorgeous. The reason I wanted so much shine is because my card is very, very plain and simple. But hopefully it's got all of these little elements that we're going to pull together to make this into a really gorgeous card. So I'm going to run this through my Big Shot machine and they just pop right out, which I absolutely love. Now if I had been thinking about it, I would have put this Stick It double-sided adhesive on the back of the gold one as well, but I forgot to. I did remember when I die cut a few more of the thank and the you words to pop it on the back of the plain white ones. Now I often get asked, I have two different types of double-sided adhesive. I use the scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive sheets and I use the Stick It adhesive sheets. Now the main difference for me between the two of them is if I want a clean die cut, for example when I'm doing words like this or sentiments, then I'm going to use the Stick It double-sided adhesive because it is really, really thin. It holds perfectly, but it's really, really thin and is going to cut beautifully when you run it through your die cutting machine. If I'm just doing a feature or I just need something where I'm not going to be die cutting it, then I know I can use the double-sided adhesive. It cuts perfectly with scissors, it cuts perfectly with trimmers, it cuts perfectly with all those sorts of things, but it is much thicker. And it is a very, very strong double-sided adhesive. So I love it for that. And I know that if I want to hold down glitter or things like that, then that would be my adhesive that I would choose. However, yeah, those are the two reasons why I use those two different double-sided adhesives. Now once I've got my thank and my you, these are 4 layers thick, so they're really big thick chipboard sentiments now, and I'm just going to make sure my splatters are dry because at this point I certainly don't want to be smudging these once I have already done my background. You can see that gorgeous little background noise there. It's kind of like you've run it through with an embossing folder, except I didn't, and it was much less cost than buying an embossing folder. So this looks really nice if I pop the thank you on the front, and I'm glad the sentiment really stands out. However, it does need a touch of something else. This is quite plain in my opinion, so I'm going to add a couple of little things to kind of zhuzh this up a bit. First of all, I'm going to cut this down so that there is going to be a nice border around my card front panel. I personally love a border. I really think it makes the card look finished. I think, yeah, I'm a border person, but some people aren't, and that's okay too if it's not your preference. I think borders make all the difference. So I'm going to cut this down, and then I've popped some foam tape on the back. And then this is going down onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. These are both made out of the same 110 pound cardstock. I use the Frenchville brand from Spotlight here in New Zealand. I know that it is the same in Australia. I've had friends who have purchased it there and it's the same. And I actually think I used to use the Recollections brand paper and I think it's identical. I think they've like rebranded or renamed because I think from what I used to use to this, I cannot spot a difference. I cannot feel a difference. I love this paper for alcohol markers, for all sorts. So it works well for me. I'm going to bring in a little bit of foliage just to break this up. This is the Curvy Leaves die from Pinkfresh Studios. It's an old favorite of mine and pretty much my kind of old faithful when it comes to needing some semi-chunky foliage to go in the background. And so I have just been able to take off that release paper from the Stick It adhesive, which makes life really easy. If I just pop it down there gently, then it's going to be able to be moved around a little bit. Stick It adhesive doesn't become permanent until you kind of press down on it. So if I just leave it sitting there on top of the paper, I'm able to move it around and manipulate everything until I'm happy with how things look. Now, as I said, this is a little bit hard with the filming lights to be able to see that texture that we created in the background. So I apologize for that, but in real life, it's quite obvious and it's definitely there. I love those little balls, the little dots that we made. If I pop my hand up here to kind of shade from the filming lights, you can see a little bit better. But honestly, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have enjoyed this video and I hope that you give this technique a go. It is so simple with so few supplies. Obviously you could trace stencils, you could trace dies, you could do so many different things with this technique. Thank you so much for joining me. I will have the products listed in the description box below this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!